The story takes place in the year 2070. Many well-known scientists around the globe are concerned about the possibility of a global drought due to water scarcity. A team of experts is dispatched to the Balhi research station on the moon in order to get ready for such a scenario beforehand. They use a fish in a tank for their initial trial. They spray it with a few droplets of an unknown liquid that resembles water. The fish initially suffocate as a result, but gradually the molecules multiply, creating more water and eventually filling the tank. In other words, the fish used the enigmatic liquid to construct an environment that allowed it to survive. Despite the fact that the first experiment was successful, a mysterious force soon forced the station to shut and the base was abandoned. The prediction comes true, and the world is confronted with a severe global water scarcity in 2075, 5 years later. Infant mortality rates have reached an all-time high as a consequence of the numerous infections and diseases brought on by drinking contaminated water. Mega vertical farms are receiving significant funding from both public and private groups in South Korea in an effort to cut down on water use. Moreover, depending on each group's significance to human survival, the government has divided the population into distinct groups, each of which receives water of varying quality and amount. Since the majority of the population no longer has access to pure water, it is understandable that the plan is unpopular with them. BASA, a Korean space agency, is then presented to us. The organization, under the direction of Director Choi, intends to dispatch a crew to the Balhi Lunar Research Station. The fish experiment took place in the same abandoned research center on the moon. It conceals a lot of government secrets, some of which could help with the planet's water shortages. 9 people make up the company, which is commanded by Captain Han, a space agency soldier. The operation is particularly risky because 117 crew members perished in the base during the most recent investigation. Dr. Song doesn't want to believe that the deaths were caused by a radiation leak, despite what they have been informed. Choi has hired Dr. Song, an astrobiologist, for the expedition. She originally declined the assignment, but she later decided to accept it in order to learn the truth about her late sister, who also perished in the Balhi accident 5 years prior. Dr. Song receives a lifelong gold membership as payment, granting her unrestricted access to pure and safe drinking water. The crew is briefed on the operation by Director Choi. It turns out that they need to take at least one research sample capsule back from the lunar station. The specifics of the sample's composition, however, are allegedly lost and unclear. All they are aware of is the need to maintain the materials at a controlled low-temperature range. Dr. Song chooses to go on the mission despite her suspicions that the SA is purposefully withholding information about the contents of the parcel. The primary pilot is relieved on the day of takeoff by a pilot by the name of Jisoo. The last-minute shift angers the crew, but Captain Han instructs everyone to persevere. The spacecraft launches and safely reaches the orbits of the Moon and Earth, respectively. They fall 7.6 kilometers northwest of where they were going on the Moon's surface after the landing apparatus malfunctions. The crew of the expedition is left to walk to the station after the spacecraft crashes off a cliff. A. Chwang, a previous researcher at the Balhi station, has suffered critical injuries. He ceases traveling at the halfway point and is unable to continue. He has previously visited the station for study, so he appears to be an expert that the others are not. He attempts to get the crew's attention but ultimately dies, which has a negative impact on their morale. Nevertheless, they resume their journey and almost run out of oxygen. They frantically fill up the tanks at Balhi Station, where they eventually arrive and make it to safety. The show then cuts back to the past, where Dr. Song can be seen attempting to learn the truth about her sister's passing. In an effort to learn what her sister was working on at the lunar outpost, she opens an encrypted file from her sister's computer. When she finally deciphers the code, the words "Find Luna" appear on the screen. Going back in time, the team discovers an old corpse with physical indications of drowning. They're perplexed because there isn't enough water on the moon for someone to submerge and perish. The crew is perplexed to find an automatic weapon in the corpse's possession, indicating that he was a mercenary, and is unable to identify the deceased body from their database. Additionally, the station's systems are all operational, and the dangerous radiation that is said to have killed the crew 5 years earlier is not present. Dr. Song recommends performing an autopsy on the corpse as her suspicion that SA is keeping them in the dark grows. However, Captain commands everyone to stick to the plan and search for the command center. They finally find the center and revive the enormous building. However, the crew is unable to reach mission headquarters because the communication system is down. Contrary to what Mission Control had informed them, the radiation levels in the control room appear to be normal. To demonstrate that they are not surrounded by high amounts of radiation, Dr. Song bravely removes her life support, and everyone else does the same. She again recommends that a thorough inspection of the station be conducted, but Han reaffirms that it is not their responsibility to look into what caused the Balhi accident. They are here to collect the samples, and that is their top concern. The staff divides into teams and searches the station for viable samples because there are 3 storages in the facility where the sample might be located. The captain, a soldier called E2, and a crew member named Dr. Hong proceed to storage number 1. Sun, Su-chan, Taesuk, and E1 are placed in storage 2. Director Gong, Dr. Song, and Jisoo visit storage in the interim. The crew is instructed by Dr. Song to examine the thermoregulator as soon as they find the capsule to make sure it is set to an extremely low temperature. Jisoo discloses that Captain Han came back from retirement on this mission for a specific reason on the way to storage 3. He is trying to get his ill daughter access to better water. It comes out that 1 in every 10 children dies after the severe drought. Team 1 encounters a clogged entrance in the meantime. The team is alarmed when they discover numerous bodies inside the door after forcing it open. The victims were frantically attempting to flee, and the area was immediately closed off in an emergency following the accident, according to a quick evaluation of the situation. The reality defies a government report that claimed the victims passed away long before the closure. Dr. Song remotely examines the corpses using a wrist computer and makes observations about their drowned body characteristics. Han rudely refuses her request to check the hospital for access to their medical records, telling her to put her personal curiosity out of her head. Both the first and second group arrive at their intended locations ultimately. However, the visible capsules are empty or gone, and it appears as though someone has already broken into the storage units to steal the sample. Team 3 notices a foreign presence roaming the facility in the interim. Jisoo informs Dr. Song that Security Chief Gong is sympathetic toward her situation and that he is aware of her sister's passing when he travels around to inspect. He also says that he would provide cover for her if she wanted to inspect the hospital's infirmary to find out the truth. Dr. Song pauses for a moment before deciding to take advantage of the situation. Crew member Su-chan of Team 2 spots a dead man holding a capsule somewhere else. He caresses the body, and as a result, tiny particle droplets are released and fall into Su's eyes. Chan's Dr. Song departs for the hospital, and Jisoo enters storeroom 3 alone to search for samples. He loses his headlamp as a result. He attempts to retrieve it, but it seems to be being pulled away by an invisible force, which terrifies the hell out of him. He regains his composure and dismisses it as a dream. After failing to find a functioning container, Team 2 returns to the command center. On the other hand, Han keeps an eye on Dr. Song's whereabouts from his watch and commands her to hurry back to Jisoo. Jisoo manages to find a viable capsule inside storage 3 by spotting it close to the floodlight. It looks like there is water inside the container. When Dr. Song visits storage number 3 again, she sees Jisoo being attacked by an unidentified force, who then lifts Jisoo by the neck and drops him to his demise. Dr. Song also witnesses the thing removing the container before it vanishes. Others soon show up and hear about the episode. They struggle to believe Dr. Song's story, as they should, but a quick examination of Jisoo's body shows fractures in his arm, ankle, and skull that couldn't have happened from a fall. Before Gong and Han review the footage from Dr. Song's body camera, Han gives the order for everyone to return to the command center. It transpires that the trespasser made his getaway through the ventilation system. Song hypothesizes that the intruder was a human because they took the sample because they understood its worth. Team member Taesuk attempts to make communication with Mission Control back at the command center, but is unsuccessful. He then surmises that there may be a problem with the nearby radio tower. Su-chan begins shaking erratically and vomits an unusual amount of water all at once. Everyone is to move back and don their biohazard suits, according to Dr. Hong. Han, Gong, and Song also hear about the situation and rush back to the command center. Despite Dr. Hong's best efforts, Su-chan ultimately perishes from drowning symptoms, much like the bodies strewn throughout the station. Han is informed by Dr. Hong that Su Corp's Chans must be quarantined while they ascertain the precise cause of death. She suggests conducting an immediate autopsy and transferring him to the main lab infirmary. Chief Gong is distraught over the loss of his sibling, and Han tries to console him. Finally, Han permits Song to review the medical files of the Balhi crew members who perished in the collision. The crew also discovers that the killer of Jisoo had access to regions not shown in the station's blueprints. While Taesuk and Sun are instructed to make communication with Mission Control, Han chooses to search the ventilation shaft with Gong and E2. As he attempts to get in touch with Mission Control, Taesuk tries to cheer up Sun, who is feeling extremely demoralized as a result of the recent events. While Song and a different soldier named E1 unsuccessfully attempt to access the encrypted medical records of the crew who lost their lives in the accident 5 years ago, Dr. Hong conducts an autopsy on Su corpse. Chan Song makes the decision to collect tissue samples from various tissues and determine when Su symptoms Chan's first manifested using the samples. In the meantime, Han, Gong, and E2 search the ventilation system for the entity and discover what appear to be its own sketches. They wait to come face to face with the entity as they soon detect a biosignal moving toward them from the front, but it goes right by them. E1 questions whether he also contracted the disease as a result of coming into touch with Su Chan as Song takes tissue samples from the dead people. Dr. Hong abruptly summons Song back to the hospital, where she requests E1 to handle the samples for her before leaving. She abruptly pauses in front of the station's data storage chamber as she is traveling. She pauses for a moment before returning to E1 to gather more samples. After that, they go back to the hospital, where Dr. Hong explains that Su Chan drowned and the water came up from within. Song examines the samples taken from various corpses, but is unable to find anything unusual. The entity's biosignal is still being followed by Han and the others, and it takes them to a gate that needs level 1 entry. Han and his crew are forced to return to the command center. There, T-Sec tells him that there is an issue with the digital unit linked to the communications tower, and someone needs to swap the equipment outside while another changes the protocol inside and restarts the system. Han offers to do the work without batting an eye. Dr. Hong displays Song Su Blood Chan's sample, which includes an unidentified substance, back at the hospital. Han soon shows up and updates them on the newest development. Before he departs, Song speaks to him in private and expresses surprise that the intruder did not attack her despite the fact that she was extremely near to it. Additionally, it appears as though the entity is acquainted with the facility's internal layout given that it eludes capture by using shafts to move and that it always succeeds in escaping because it is one step ahead. Song has a strong suspicion that the object could be a 5-year-old human survival. Even though Han finds it hard to believe, Song informs him that if the government could be wrong about the radiation levels, it very well could be mistaken about survivors. Han responds by saying that if it were a true survivor, it wouldn't have taken the sample and assaulted them. The scene cuts to Han leaving to fix the transmission system as it does so. Han can be seen moving slowly toward the National Hospital Center. The doctor advises him that he needs a better water classification to prevent his daughter's condition from getting worse after she is admitted to the hospital. She might permanently lose her legs if her situation gets worse. Song and Hong review the water in Suchan's blood in the present. Although it differs in bulk and density, it has water solubility and surface tension. It also doesn't contain any microbes, making it comparable to distilled water in that regard. To repair the communication system, Han uses a safety harness to descend the station. However, the abandoned platform lift below him suddenly starts to move and shoots upward, ripping the safety harness out. Han barely escapes death and holds onto a wall until the team dropping another rope above him. Unfortunately, the elevator free falls from the summit once more, forcing the crew to let go of the rope. Han is able to secure his rope to the wall before leaping out of the way of the lift. He compromises his life support system in the process, despite quickly running out of oxygen. He insists on coming back once the communication system has been fixed. He finally gets the system running again, but before he can get back up, he passes out. Back at the hospital, Song notes that after Su Chan passed away, the amount of water in his body ceased growing. Water could be a virus because it spreads quickly once the host is infected and ceases to function when the host expires. Hans, meanwhile, discovers himself inside the station when he opens his eyes. It comes out that he had lost consciousness due to a lack of oxygen, and Gong and E2 had brought him back, even though the system doesn't appear to be malfunctioning. They are shocked to discover upon returning to the command center that there has been no transmission of signals from mission control. Suddenly, the computer discovers an unknown signal coming in from outside and being sent to Storage 3 area. Han and the others head over right away to look into Jisu's corpse. They find a mobile device on his corpse that he had been using to keep in touch with a different group on occasion. He was actually working as a covert agent for RX, a competitor space research organization that also desires the samples it was discovered. Director Choi expresses remorse over the deaths of 3 crew members, including the spy, and Han tells her that she gave her approval for the co-pilot to be changed at the last minute when Han's team finally uses the device to make contact with Earth. Additionally, he informs Choi of the survivor and the low radiation levels inside the facility. Han wonders if Choi hasn't been entirely honest with him given her lack of response. He issues a warning to her, saying that if she has been withholding information from him, he will no longer be interested in the operation's success. He is reassured by Choi that she has no justification for keeping information from him and that the relief ships will be dispatched after they have collected the samples. Song and her squad head back to the command center as Han and the others get ready to search for the intruder. Han is questioned by Song about his knowledge that the sample they were sent to get is water. The query is answered by Han's guilty silence, and a flashback shows him receiving information about the water that Song's sister found on the moon. Han eventually reveals that the water at the Balhi station was what killed everyone. The infinite reproduction of lunar water makes it seem like an incredible resource. It has the ability to save humanity if one could manage its commercialization and multiplication. It is also made known that lunar water only becomes active when it comes into touch with a living thing. Song is upset that the government did everything possible to conceal the presence of lunar water while the scientists at Balhi perished as a result of the lunar water. Han consents to give her access to the station's data storage as payment for lying to her. They encounter vast amounts of info there. They are suddenly distracted by a green leaf poking up from the earth. To their astonishment, when they open what appears to be a lid, they find that the basement is covered in green plants.